Every month, I sent my mother Y8,000 for living expenses. Yet back home, she was surviving on plain noodles and pickles. My sister-in-law mocked me in the family group chat for only pretending to care, while my dad and brother backed her up. At first, I thought there had to be some misunderstanding. Then I checked the bank records and discovered my sister-in-law had secretly linked Mom's bank card to her own phone. For 2 whole years, she'd drained every cent I sent. That day, I was at my desk checking reports when a voice message from Mom suddenly came through. "Xiaoyu, stop sending money. Whether you send it or not, I never see a cent." My heart tightened and I quickly asked, "Mom, what did you just say?" "I've been eating plain noodle soup every meal. I can't even afford eggs. Don't blame me for always asking you for money. I really can't go on like this." My head buzzed. I froze on the spot. For the past 2 years, I'd sent her Y8,000 on the 25th of every month. How could she say she hadn't seen a cent? Before I could ask more, the family group chat exploded. My sister-in-law, Liu Yue, dropped a message. "Here comes Big Sis, pretending to be the perfect daughter again. Mom lives in that dump, and you didn't know. Don't just talk like you care." Then she added sarcastically, "Did you really send Mom money, or was it all just for show?" No one in the chat defended me. They were all waiting to see me humiliated. Furious, I slammed my phone onto the desk, then snatched it back up and took one long screenshot of 2 years' worth of transfers. 24 payments. Everyone clearly showed. Recipient Su Huilan, card ending 6892, Y8,000 a month. Note, living expenses. I posted the records in the group and told them to look for themselves. Liu Yue replied instantly, "Anyone can Photoshop a screenshot. Show us the receiving card number if you're so sure." I couldn't be bothered arguing. I enlarged the line ending in 6892 and sent it. "Card ending 6892, isn't that Mom's card?" Mom quickly replied in the group, "Yes, that's my card." But a second later, she sent another message. "But I really haven't received a single cent." I stared at the words, "haven't received it," feeling like I'd been hit in the head. The card was hers and the recipient name was hers. So how was the money not reaching her? Then I remembered my last visit. She was still using an old chipped kettle that leaked badly from the spout. I told her, "Mom, buy a new one. You have enough money to replace it many times over. It still works." Back then I thought she was just frugal. She wasn't frugal, she was broke. I posted one last message. "I was going home tomorrow and I'd get to the bottom of this at the bank myself. Do whatever you want. Just don't make a scene you can't walk back from and tear this family apart." I shut down my computer, grabbed my coat, and left. When the elevator reached the lobby, I zoomed in on that screenshot again. Card ending 6892 was definitely the one Mom used, yet she lived in a rundown old apartment and couldn't even afford eggs. So where had the money gone? When I reached my hometown the next day, a light rain was falling. Mom's building had no elevator, and the stairwell reeked of damp mildew. The moment the door opened, cooking fumes and moldy air rushed out, making it hard to breathe. My mother, Su Huilan, wore an old sweater with frayed cuffs. She smiled when she saw me, but her eyes immediately turned red. "Look, I didn't want to tell you, but living like this..." She pointed at the table. A bag of noodles, a small bottle of soy sauce, and a dish of pickles. There was barely any cooking oil, and the pickles had dried hard around the edges. A deep ache spread through my chest. After steadying myself, I asked, "Mom, where's Dad?" My father, Lin Zhenhua, came out of the back room. His eyes darted away, and he wouldn't look at me. "I send you Y8,000 every month. How did you end up living like this?" With trembling hands, Mom pulled an ATM receipt from her worn wallet. The balance was just YCAR 3762. I stared at the number in disbelief, my scalp prickling as I asked, "Is this the card I send the money to?" "This is the one. Your money goes here, but whenever I withdraw cash, there's barely anything in it." I took the card. Sure enough, it ended in 6892. It was definitely Mom's. I looked up at Dad, confused. He deliberately avoided my eyes, his Adam's apple bobbing as he stared hard at the floor. My heart dropped. I stared at him in disbelief. He wasn't clueless. He was afraid I'd find out. Early the next morning, I took Mom to the bank. A teller quickly printed a thick stack of transaction records. They clearly showed Wire 8,000 arriving every month. But almost within the same minute, YU79998 was transferred to an unfamiliar account. Mom's face went white. "I never made those transfers. I don't even know how to use mobile banking. How could I transfer money?" The teller pointed at the statement. "Ma'am, it says these transfers were made through mobile banking." I stared at the words mobile banking transfer, my chest tight with rage. Someone had been stealing money from my mother right under my nose. I quickly asked the teller, "What phone number is linked to this card?" The teller tapped a few keys. "It starts with 138 and ends in 3569. Mom froze. "That's not my number. Mine starts with 159. She hurriedly pulled out her phone. The screen was cracked and the buttons were worn white. It couldn't even run a banking app. Mom slapped her ID onto the counter. Her voice was quiet but firm. "Check it. Find out exactly who stole my money." Realizing how serious this was, the teller quickly printed the form used to change the SMS alert number. I grabbed it and checked the authorized agent's signature box. 3 sharply written characters filled the line. My heart sank. It wasn't Mom's handwriting. It looked like Liu Yue's. After leaving the bank, I took Mom straight to the mobile carrier store. She sat on a plastic chair, her legs shaking badly. I handed the change form to an employee. "Please check who this number belongs to." After entering the number, the employee said, "It's a secondary line registered to Liu Yue." It felt like a bomb went off in my head. Mom's bank alerts had been linked to my sister-in-law's secondary phone line. Mom collapsed into the chair, eyes wide as tears poured down her face. I put a hand on her shoulder. She was trembling badly. "Xiaoyu, why would Yue do this?" I I clenched my fists, too furious to answer. I wanted to ask her the same thing. What gave her the right? The shock was too much for Mom, and she fainted. I caught her and rushed her to the hospital. The doctor said seriously, "It's nothing critical. She fainted from severe emotional stress, but she's older and can't handle another shock." When I returned to the hospital room, Dad stood by the window, watching, but making no move to go inside. I pulled out the change form and walked up to him. "Dad, you knew all along, didn't you?" My dad froze, sucked in a sharp breath, and stared at the floor, too ashamed to look at me. "This is between me and your mom. Can you stay out of it?" I stared at him in disbelief. "Mom hasn't seen a cent in 2 years, and you're telling me to drop it." My dad looked exhausted and scared. "Your brother has it hard too. Yue didn't mean any harm." My head buzzed as I let out a cold laugh. "No harm? Then what do you call moving Mom's money onto her secondary card? Go ask your brother. Don't make a scene at the hospital. Isn't this embarrassing enough?" I put away the change form and stared at my dad with icy eyes. Then it hit me. Liu Yue hadn't dared do this alone. My dad and brother were the reason she felt untouchable. That night, I went to my brother's place. Ling Hui lived in a new complex with an elevator to his door and spotless, gleaming carpets. The moment I walked in, I saw a brand new TV and a massage chair. Liu Yue lounged in it, scrolling short videos, her phone case almost blinding. She saw me and smiled first. "Big bro, you're back? So did the bank find anything?" There was no guilt in her smile, only suspicion. I slapped the change form onto the coffee table. "Explain why Mom's money was transferred to your card." Liu Yue's smile froze for a second, then quickly returned. "Oh, come on. Mom's old phone doesn't get alerts. I was afraid she'd get scammed, so I linked the account to my phone and kept an eye on it. I did it for her." I gave a cold laugh. "For her? Then why does she have only 37 yuan left after 2 years?" My brother Ling Hui came out of the kitchen carrying a fruit platter. The moment he heard balance, his face changed. "Bro, don't talk about Yue like that. She meant well. Mom can't use a smartphone, and leaving money in the bank wasn't safe, so we invested it for her." "Invested it?" I stared at them. "Show me the investment account." Liu Yue pulled her phone to her chest, her voice turning hard. "Investments are private. You're just her brother-in-law. Don't you think you're overstepping? You earn 8,000 a month and suddenly think you're king of the family?" She lounged in the massage chair, looking at me like I was trash. I held back my anger and said, "I don't want to be king. I want my mom's money. Hand it over." Liu Yue scoffed. "Your mom's money? Your dad always managed it before. That's how this family works. Now you suddenly come home demanding records. Did someone put you up to this? Or does your wife think your family has too much money?" Before I could answer, "Bro, stop pushing me. Things finally settled down at home. Do you have to tear everything apart?" I stared at my brother, stunned by how unfamiliar he seemed. We once shared a tiny bed, and he'd promised with shining eyes to buy Mom and me a big house. Now he stood behind Liu Yue, a world away from me. I had no strength left to argue. Disappointed, I turned toward the door. "Tomorrow, bring every record for this so-called investment and we'll check it together. If you can't, stop using family duty to guilt-trip me." Liu Yue called after me. "Go ahead and investigate. Just remember, your brother is Mom's son, too." I shut the door. The hallway lights felt painfully bright. Back home, I checked the statements. Every transfer had gone to the same account, Anti-Trading Commissariat Limited. I recognized the name. Last year, Liu Yue posted, "The family business is finally back on its feet. No more begging anyone for help," with a photo of a new car's steering wheel. I circled the corporate account number, my blood running cold. The money hadn't been spent. They had moved it. The next day, I called everyone to Mom's house to compare the records. She wiped the table spotless and lined up the cups as if afraid our argument would tear apart the little home she had left. My dad sat stiffly on the couch but kept avoiding my brother's and Liu Yue's eyes. The moment my brother and Liu Yue walked in, she sighed. "Big bro, with all this drama, do you think Mom can handle it?" I ignored her and spread the statements across the table. "This money went to Anti-Trading. Who owns Anti?" My brother's expression flickered. "It's Yue's brother's company. Businesses need cash flow. That's normal." I looked straight at Liu Yue. "Why should your brother's company use the money I gave Mom? Hand me your phone." Liu Yue clutched her bag to her chest. "Why should I? Taking my phone would be an invasion of privacy." I set my phone on the table and started screen recording. "Fine, keep your phone. Just answer a few questions." She raised an eyebrow. "Ask." I asked, "What did Mom use as her bank card PIN?" Liu Yue blurted, "Her memory's bad, so she used the last 6 digits of her ID." The moment the words left her mouth, she realized her mistake and froze. The room fell silent. Mom stared blankly at her. "How do you know the last 6 digits of my ID?" "Mom, you told us before. You always said you couldn't remember a PIN, so you used those numbers. Am I not allowed to overhear something?" I watched panic flash across her face before she forced it away. I already knew the answer. She wasn't managing Mom's money. She'd secretly learned how Mom verified the account and used it to steal from her. But I couldn't confront them yet. I needed solid proof, something they couldn't deny. I gathered the statements and said calmly, "Fine, I'll keep digging. Tomorrow we're running a test." My brother frowned. "What kind of test?" "I'll transfer Mom 1 yuan and see which phone gets the alert. If it appears on her phone, I'll apologize and leave on the spot." Liu Yue finally went pale, as if someone had grabbed her by the throat. "You're insane!" I stared at her. "Then what are you afraid of?" On the 3rd day, I fully charged my phone, started screen recording, and set it on the corner of the table facing Liu Yue. Mom sat nearby holding her old phone, rubbing her fingers along her pant leg, trying to hide her nerves. My dad sat on the couch holding his blood pressure pills, rolling them around in his palm. My brother stood behind Liu Yue, frowning hard. Bro, enough, stop using mom as a prop. I didn't look up. I opened the banking app, entered the last 4 digits of mom's card, 6892, typed in 1.0 when, and hit confirm. The screen spun for a moment, then showed transfer successful. Mom's old phone stayed silent, then Liu Yue's bag chimed, a crisp, unmistakable sound. That tiny chime hit mom like a needle. She jerked her head up as Liu Yue's face went paper white. Her hand shot toward the bag. I moved faster than Liu Yue and clamped a hand over her bag. Don't move! Her eyes turned vicious. Let go! Why are you grabbing my stuff? I aimed my screen recording at her. I'm not taking anything. I just want to see the text. Liu Yue lunged for my phone and my younger brother reached out to stop me. Mom jumped up in fright. Stop fighting! In the chaos, Liu Yue pulled the phone from her bag. Her fingers flew across the screen with the ease of someone who did this every day. From the side, I clearly recorded her opening the messages and tapping delete. She moved so fast, as if that text couldn't be allowed to survive another second. A chill ran through me, but my voice grew steadier. Why did you delete it? Liu Yue panted and snapped. You're filming my private messages, what? Was I supposed to leave them there for you? I paused the recording at the exact second she entered the passcode. You typed this, didn't you? Mom's banking alerts are linked to your add-on card, and you call that helping? Mom stood beside us, pale as paper. Her lips trembled as she looked at Liu Yue. Yue, did you really take my money? Liu Yue tried to argue, but my brother suddenly roared, Enough! The shout seemed to scare even him and his eyes turned red. Yue, what did you do? Liu Yue pressed her lips together and forced out, What did I do? I just borrowed it for cash flow. I'll pay it back in 2 months. Your mom wasn't using it. It was just sitting there. Those words shattered something in Mom's eyes. She murmured, That was my retirement money. Dad suddenly clutched his chest and staggered, as if every bone had been pulled from his body. He tried to speak, but no sound came out, and his face turned gray. Mom screamed, Liang! I caught him. His hands were ice cold. Sweat burst across his forehead, and he stared at me as if begging me not to continue. His lips moved, forcing out, Don't call the police. The next second, his vision went dark and his whole body went limp. When the ambulance siren sounded downstairs, my phone was still frozen on that frame. Liu Yue's finger hovered over delete, like it hovered over the 2 years Mom had survived on plain noodles. In the ER, Dad lay in bed with an oxygen tube under his nose, as if pushing me to make a choice. The doctor said it was acute angina with high blood pressure, so they needed to keep him under observation. Mom sat on a hallway bench, clutching her old cloth bag. Inside was a receipt showing only 37 yuan left. She stared at it for a long time, unable to believe her own daughter-in-law could be this cruel. My brother crouched in the corner, head buried in his knees, sobbing as his shoulders shook. At the end of the hall, Liu Yue kept scrolling through her phone, agitated, as if searching for a way out. I walked over to Mom and lowered my voice. Mom, what do you want to do? Mom looked up at me, eyes painfully red but dry. She spoke softly. Your dad said not to call the police. He's afraid this family will fall apart. I nodded. I know. She looked down at the ATM receipt, crushed it in her fist, then slowly smoothed it out. But if this family stays together, I stay broke. After everything your sister-in-law did to me, what kind of family is that? She looked up. Call the police. My throat tightened. Mom, if we report this, he could go to jail. Mom's lips trembled. When his wife took my retirement money, did she care whether I might starve? I nodded, pulled out my phone, and made the call. The investigators arrived quickly. An investigator named Chen opened his notebook. Ma'am, can you confirm this card is in your name and someone else changed the phone number for the text alerts? Mom nodded weakly. Yes. The investigator studied the recording and frowned. Money arriving and being transferred out immediately, plus the alert number being changed, we can take the case. Bring us the transaction history, change request, and proof of ownership. We'll apply to trace the funds. He looked at me. How your family argues is your business, but an elderly person's savings are their lifeline. Don't delay this any longer. I looked at Liu Yue. She finally panicked, grabbed my brother's sleeve, and shrieked, You're just going to let your brother call the police? You won't stop him? Your mom has lost it and you're doing nothing? My brother looked up, his eyes bloodshot. You're the one who's lost it. Mom's tears finally fell, but they weren't soft, they burned. When he refused to answer her, Liu Yue yanked a settlement agreement from her bag and shoved a pen into Mom's hand. Mom, just sign it. Say the money was returned and we settled this privately. If you don't sign, they won't lift the freeze. Our whole family is finished. I snatched the papers away and flipped to the last page. In tiny print, it said, I voluntarily waive all claims and will not pursue any further repayment. I slammed the papers onto the table. Liu Yue, you're still trying to scam my mother? Liu Yue's fake sobbing stopped instantly, and the malice showed on her face. Ling Yun, you really want to go this far? Your brother's job depends on me. Your dad is sick. Are you never going to need us again? You're burning every bridge. Can you carry this family forever? Mom finally spoke, softly but firmly. I relied on you. And what did that get me? 37 yuan. She pushed the pen back. I'm not signing this time. Return the money or don't. Explain it to the investigators yourself. Liu Yue stared at Mom, her expression changing. Fine. You're all so impressive, then don't blame me when I cut this family off. My brother stood there, lips moving as if he wanted to speak, but in the end, he only lowered his head. As the door closed, I heard Liu Yue curse in the hallway. You ungrateful old woman! That insult hooked every bit of pain Mom had swallowed for 2 years and dragged it all out. She didn't cry. She only pushed the bag of cash toward me. Yun, keep the money and give it to the investigators. Don't let her accuse us of extorting her. I nodded, but my palms felt even colder. This wasn't the end. It was the start of the next battle. Once Liu Yue realized we wouldn't drop the case, she panicked and suddenly turned sweet. First, she messaged me privately. Come on, don't take this too far. I'll pay it back. I'll return the money. We're still family. We still have to live with each other. She offered to return 100,000 yen up front. I laughed coldly. That 100,000 yen was just a bone she hoped would make me go away. I replied, paying it back is one thing, misusing it is another. Tell the investigators. She instantly switched to sobbing. You'll ruin your brother. His employer reviews his records. How is he supposed to face anyone? When I didn't reply, she quickly rallied the relatives to pressure me. My aunt said, Xiaoyu, family problems stay in the family. If you report this, you'll ruin your brother's life. Just make Liu Yue pay the money back and sign an IOU. My uncle snapped, You're heartless. If you won't protect your own brother, who will? I listened to them, shaking with anger. They kept talking about my brother's future. Not one person mentioned what Mom had endured for the past 2 years. I showed them Mom's balance. She has only Y to 3762 left in her account. So tell me, why shouldn't I report it? Everyone who had told me to be the bigger person suddenly went completely silent. Early the next morning, Liu Yue's card stopped working too. Her screams cut through the door like a blade. Why is my card frozen? Lin Hui, they froze your business account too. Your brother did this. My brother shouted from inside. It wasn't him. You did this to yourself. I stood downstairs listening to them fight. I felt no satisfaction, only a heavy weight in my chest. This was my own brother's home, but it had been built with Mom's money. The next evening, Liu Yue cornered Mom outside the apartment complex. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept all night. The moment she saw Mom, she burst into tears. Mom, I don't blame you for reporting us, but if the accounts stay frozen, Lin Hui's company will collapse. The workers won't get paid, creditors are at the door, and he might do something drastic. Mom was carrying a grocery basket with a bag of eggs inside. When she heard something drastic, her hand trembled. Liu Yue quickly shoved a sheet of paper into her hand. Mom, just sign this. Say the money was returned and that you forgive us. Then the authorities can unfreeze the accounts. Sign it and everyone gets a way out. I walked over, pulled the paper away, and saw the title, Letter of Forgiveness. The line underneath was even worse. I confirmed that I suffered no financial loss. This was merely a family misunderstanding. I folded the paper in half and shoved it back into Liu Yue's hand. When you wrote that, did you remember Mom had only Y37 left? Liu Yue cried even harder. I made a stupid mistake. I never said I wouldn't pay it back. Can't you give me one chance? Mom looked at her like she was looking at a stranger. You watched me eat plain noodles every day because I couldn't even spare money for one egg. Did you ever give me a chance? When begging failed, Liu Yue's voice suddenly turned sharp and cold. You think you won? Now everyone will say your brother married a thief. He'll never be able to hold his head up again. You feel good. What about him? Mom hugged the grocery basket a little tighter. If he can't hold his head up, it's because he chose not to see the truth, not because of me. Liu Yue's lips shook with rage. Before leaving, she shot me a vicious glare. Fine, just wait. You think the authorities can protect you forever? You'd better be careful when you go outside. I watched her disappear into the building, but I felt no relief. She was right. The authorities couldn't protect us forever. So my next move was to make sure Mom's account became something Liu Yue could never touch again. The investigation moved faster than I expected. The authorities handed us proof that Liu Yue had stolen the money. With the evidence right in front of him, my brother Lin Hui completely broke down. Mom kept running her fingers over the case receipt. Officer Chen handed her a notice confirming the recovered funds. Ma'am, we can return part of the frozen money now. The rest will go through asset recovery and a civil claim, so please be prepared for a long process. Mom nodded very slowly. Anything we get back is better than nothing. We followed Officer Chen to the bank. The teller transferred the recovered money into Mom's new account, and her phone suddenly chimed.
She froze for 2 seconds before pulling out her phone. A message appeared on the screen.
Your account has received Y98,560 €. She stared at the message as her eyes slowly filled with tears and her lips began to tremble. Xiaoyu, it really came back to me this time. I nodded, my throat tightening. Mom, this money is yours now. My brother was standing nearby. His face went pale, then red. Suddenly, he crouched down and covered his face with both hands. Mom, I really didn't know. I had no idea you had so little left. Mom didn't help him up or scold him. She simply tucked the receipt into her wallet beside the slip showing a wider 37 balance. Mom said quietly, You didn't know because you didn't want to know. If you want to be a good son, start paying attention. My brother looked up, tears clinging to his lashes, and nodded. When we left the bank that day, the sunlight felt painfully bright, not because it was strong, but because the truth was finally out, and everyone had to face it. After that, my brother filed for divorce. He hadn't suddenly become wise. He had finally realized that every time he stood with his wife, he stood against Mom. On the day of the divorce, Liu Yue smashed the dishes, screamed that I had ruined her life, and called Mom a stubborn old hag. Mom didn't fight back. She simply placed the bank card in her wallet as if taking control of her own life again. The case recovered some of the money, but not all of it. Officer Chen said some funds had already been transferred and spent, so recovering them would require a civil claim. Mom didn't press for more answers. She used the recovered money for 2 things first. First, she bought all of Dad's medication. Second, she opened a brand new bank card. The day the new card was ready, she went to the bank alone for the first time. She didn't ask me to come. She said, "I need to learn to handle this myself." As she walked away, she looked so small, clutching the card like it was her last line of defense. Just as the case entered mediation, Dad collapsed. At the hospital, the bill made me break out in a cold sweat. Dad had suffered a stroke. One side of his mouth drooped, he couldn't grip a cup, yet his eyes never left Mom. When he woke up, his first words weren't about the pain. He called her name in a hoarse voice. "Huilin, I was wrong." Mom sat by the bed. She didn't cry or yell. "Your mistake wasn't being afraid the family would fall apart. It was assuming I would keep putting up with everything forever." Dad's tears rolled into the pillow, like all the words he had swallowed over the years. My brother stood in the doorway, his face gray. "Bro, did Dad end up like this because we reported her?" I looked up at him. "If you need someone to blame, blame the day your wife took Mom's money, not the day we reported it." His lips moved, but no words came out. A child ran past in the hospital hallway, laughing like they belonged to another world. Our family stayed frozen beside that bed, and no one felt free. Mom slipped the hospital bill into her bag. "I'll pay it myself. We'll spend what we need and save what we can." My heart ached. She used to fear spending money because she couldn't replace it. Now she feared something else, that her money might disappear again. After Dad was hospitalized, the bank manager called and offered to rebuild the security settings on Mom's account. I took Mom to the bank. The manager pointed to mobile banking and crossed it out. "Ma'am, for a pension account, I recommend disabling mobile banking and keeping view-only access. Transfers should require an in-person visit. Even if someone changes the phone number, they still can't move the money." Mom stared as if she'd just learned there was a way to bolt the door shut for good. The manager handed her an authorization change form. "Ma'am, press your fingerprint here. From now on, any phone number change requires your ID and a face scan. No one else can do it for you." Mom pressed her red fingerprint onto the form. Her hand shook badly, but the print came out perfectly clear. Then she looked up at the manager. "Then how was someone able to do it for me before?" The manager didn't call her foolish, he simply told her the truth. Older people hate trouble and trust family. That's exactly what bad people take advantage of. Mom went quiet for a moment, then tucked the slip into her cloth bag, handling it with incredible care. "I'm not afraid to make a fuss anymore." As we left the bank, she suddenly said to me, "Xiao Yu, I used to think I had to keep giving in so the kids wouldn't be embarrassed. Now I know my dignity is mine to earn, not mine to hand away." I looked at her, my heart warming and aching all at once. Those words, "I'm not afraid to make a fuss anymore," had cost her 2 years of plain noodles and a balance of just 37 yuan. After that, every time I sent money, she checked the balance at an ATM that same day, photographed the receipt, and sent it to me. She sent me a photo. The receipt was pressed under her palm, showing a balance of 10,236.15 yuan. Then came another message. "Xiao Yu, I can see it." I stared at those words, my nose stinging. Mom laughed softly on the other end. It sounded like she could finally breathe again. Dad heard her from his bed and his expression softened too. But I knew she was done handing over her money just to keep the peace. This time, she was holding on to it so she could actually live. On the first snowy day of winter, Mom skipped the bank and went to the market for eggs. The egg vendor knew her and casually asked, "Huilan, finally treating yourself today?" Mom gave a tight little smile. "Just buying some. There's a patient at home who needs the nutrition." Her fingers trembled as she picked out the eggs, like even touching them might break something. The total was 890 yuan. She pulled out her living expenses card and handed it over. Then her phone really did ping. At the stall, she pulled it out and saw, "Charged 890 yuan, balance 10,227.25 yuan." She read the alert 3 times before looking up at the vendor. "Add 2 more, make it a round number." Back home, she put the eggs in the cupboard. This time, she didn't mutter about the price. She just screenshotted the alert and saved it. The folder was called This Month. She told me, "Now I know wherever yuan goes. That's enough for me." At that moment, the knot that had been sitting in my chest finally loosened a little. But I knew the story wasn't over. Getting the money back was one thing. Making sure it never vanished again was another. While the case moved through the system, the community center asked me to speak. Staff said more seniors had recently lost pensions through help setting up mobile banking, and they wanted a real case. I didn't want to go. I didn't want our family's mess laid out in public. But Mom pulled out that receipt and pressed it into my palm. "Don't be ashamed. The shame belongs to the people taking an old person's money, not the one who reports it." My chest warmed. I nodded. "I'll do it." On the day of the talk, a row of seniors sat in the room, their eyes cloudy but focused. Suddenly, an older man in the back slapped the table. My daughter-in-law said she'd link a second card and handle the text alerts because my eyesight was bad. The room erupted. Staff calmed everyone down and took him aside to check. Half an hour later, they came back. Their faces were pale. They had stopped another case just in time. The money was about to be transferred out. A chill ran down my spine. So our family wasn't an isolated case. There was a whole playbook wrapped in fake family devotion, built to prey on seniors. After the talk, my phone rang. It was my brother. His voice was hard. "Sis, do you really have to tell everyone? You want the whole town knowing what happened in our family?" I was silent for 2 seconds, then said, "I'm explaining the process, not naming your wife. People will still hear it and think I married a thief." I didn't shout, I just asked, "Then why didn't you ever check how much money Mom had left?" He said nothing and hung up. I stood outside the community center, the cold wind stinging my face. Mom texted, Come home when you're done. I boiled eggs. I saw the word eggs and suddenly smiled. She could finally bring herself to cook eggs, not because she had more money, but because she knew it wouldn't mysteriously disappear again. When I got home, something felt off. Mom looked down and asked, Xiaoyu, does your dad still blame me for reporting it? I looked toward the bedroom. Dad was awake, staring at the ceiling. He blames himself, I said. Mom nodded, gave a bitter little smile, and said nothing more. That night, Mom stayed with Dad in the hospital. In a hoarse voice, Dad suddenly said, Huilan, I was afraid the family would fall apart. Mom held the cup to his lips. Calmly, she said, So to keep the family together, you were willing to break me? If I broke, none of you would be okay either. Dad's tears fell onto the blanket. He looked like a child. The next day, my brother stood outside the hospital room for a long time. He didn't come in. He only sent a message. Sis, I want to see Dad, and I want to say something to Mom. I handed the phone to Mom. She stared at the message for a long time. Finally, she replied, You can visit. 3 rules. No arguing, no money talk, and don't bring anyone with papers to sign. My brother replied, Okay. Looking at those 3 rules, I finally breathed a little easier. Once boundaries are in place, a family has a chance. Not through endless sacrifice, but through rules. When my brother came to visit, he brought a case of milk and a bag of apples. He stood in the doorway, gripping the plastic bag so tightly his knuckles went white, too afraid to step in. Mom saw him and sighed. Come in. He sat down, speaking barely above a whisper. Mom, I'm sorry. She didn't answer right away. She took out the receipt showing 37 yuan and placed it on the bedside table. Then she said, I check every day now. If you really care, don't rush to say sorry. Show me you've changed. My brother looked up, his eyes red. Dad lay in bed, lips moving as if he wanted to speak but had no strength. My brother stood, tucked Dad's blanket in, and his hand trembled. At the door, he turned back to me. Sis, can I start sending Mom some money every month too? I didn't answer right away. I only asked, What will you put in the memo? He froze. Mom answered for him. Write for Mom only. He nodded, as if he finally understood. Those 3 words weren't dramatic. They were a boundary. That night, I went back to my apartment and opened my banking app. I changed next month's transfer memo. I used to write living expenses without a second thought. Now I typed, letter by letter, for Mom only. She messaged me. My phone pinged this time. I stared at that sentence, my eyes stinging. Every transfer used to feel like money dropped into a black hole. Now, finally, I wasn't afraid. In the hospital, Mom placed that month's transfer record beside Dad's pillow. Dad turned, reached for the receipt, and brushed it with his fingertips. It made a soft rustle. Mom said quietly, Lin, look, the money is with me now. Dad swallowed hard and said hoarsely, Good, good. A nurse came in with a bill and said there was still a rehab payment due. Mom pulled the living expenses card from her wallet without hesitation. She wasn't afraid of having no money anymore. Then my brother sent a transfer screenshot. It wasn't much, 2,000 yuan. The memo was written carefully, for Mom only. Then came another message. Mom, I won't come back yet. Don't send it back. Yell at me if you want. Just don't go hungry again. Mom stared at those 3 words for a long time, then replied with one word, Okay. I knew that okay weighed more on my brother than any scolding. Looking at Mom, I suddenly knew she could finally build a life of her own, without swallowing every hurt. I watched her expression soften. We smiled at each other in silence, both of us finally at peace.